Well, hello and welcome to a special Movie Burner podcast from Movie Burner Entertainment. We're only one day away from the release of Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi, and we're talking Star Wars for the next 8 days, from The Phantom Menace to The Force Awakens. We'll be discussing these in episodic order, and we'll even throw in the first of the standalone films, Rogue One, for good measure. The countdown begins.
And today we're going to be discussing the J.J. Abrams' first film of the sequel trilogy, of course released in 2015. It's the much maligned now Force Awakens. As I say, it's much maligned because a lot of people in the subsequent 2 years after its release have criticised it and come down on it. I think it's popular now to hate on this film, but I have to tell you, at the time I absolutely loved it and I still love it. I think it's an absolutely fantastic film, Stephen. It's a return to form for the Star Wars franchise. It captures the feel of the original Star Wars films perfectly for me. It's fun, it's a space opera, it's got great characters, it's got great lightsaber battles, great space battle in it. I love it.
Yeah, this was first announced back in 2013, John. The first thing that I heard was the takeover from Disney for Lucasfilm, from George Lucas. And then I think within a few days it was announced that they were making a new episode of the saga films. My first reaction was, how's this going to work? You know, everything was tied up back in 1983. This is obviously 32 years in the making. I was very excited with this news. I was also very anxious to see if the original three would return, in particular Harrison Ford. Pretty sure I read somewhere that Mark Hamill said he was only going to do this if Harrison Ford returned, and that really did make me, worry whether or not Han Solo and Luke Skywalker would show up at all. But thankfully they did. J.J. Abrams obviously is very good at rebooting franchises. He had some success with Star Trek. He's obviously done independent films as well. He's an excellent writer. Yeah, and I was very excited to see this. Mark Hamill at the time did reiterate through chat shows, etc., that this wasn't going to be Luke Skywalker's story anymore. It certainly was going to be more of a mentor. But it was very exciting. We went to see this, Kevin, yourself and me, when it first released, John. Very nervous getting into the theatre because, sometimes you do think, should they just leave things be? Luke Skywalker had a great ending, Leia had a great ending, Han Solo had a great ending, and Chewbacca, etc. It was it was all tied up with a neat little bow at the end of Return of the Jedi. The Rebels had won, and you were opening that can of worms again, and it was very. I've got to say, I know that I was very anxious getting into this.
Yeah, I mean, also the build up to it coming out, as you said, it was announced that Disney took over, and then they announced that they were going to do more films. Incredibly exciting time. I remember going on to the Jedi Council forums and every single day looking for new information. It was just an incredible time to be a Star Wars fan. And as you said, there was a lot of will they, won't they, with the original three. Would they come back? I think Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill actually met with George Lucas in a restaurant and he discussed them coming back. I don't think he'd done the same with Harrison Ford, but eventually he did sign on, as you said. And yeah, I completely agree. I think he actually says at the time you spoke to Kevin, and he says he didn't sleep the night before because he was that anxious about the film. I wasn't particularly anxious, I have to say. I was just incredibly excited to see another Star Wars film again. Really excited to see it, see what J.J. Abrams was going to do. And also before the release, there was a lot of speculation over whether Luke Skywalker was going to have a meteor role in it or not. And then I think around about maybe 6 months before, we started getting hints that it was going to be about him disappearing. They were going to be searching for him. He wasn't going to be in most of the film, but we were thinking, well, at least he'll have a small speaking role at some point. He'll maybe come in and save the day. And then it became abundantly clear that he wasn't going to have that either. So yeah, that did kind of add a little bit of anxiety. But my over-abiding emotions going into this film was just sheer excitement. Yeah,
December 2014, the first teaser trailer dropped, John. This was the one Andy Serkis narrates. We first see our first character, a black stormtrooper.
Yeah, and that also created a lot of controversy in certain parts of the world. I personally couldn't give a damn. I thought he looked seriously cool. And Andy Serkis is, there's been an awakening. What a moment that was. And that teaser trailer was just, everything about that was incredible for me. The sight of Kylo Ren walking through the jungle and igniting the sort of a wonky lightsaber, just incredible. I loved the way they rolled out all the trailers in the lead up to this. I thought it was perfectly spaced out, everything just perfectly handled. I think maybe towards the end, closer to the film, they did release maybe a little bit too many TV spots, but I thought for the most part it was absolutely perfect. It got the anticipation sky high, and they reaped the rewards also with the massive gross.
Yeah, my favourite of the 3 trailers, there was 2 teaser trailers, and obviously the trailer itself was the one that was released, I think, round about May time.
Yeah.
This is the one that Luke Skywalker narrates, and it's clearly just intercuts audio from Return of the Jedi, but it's a very good put together trailer. And you know that shot where you see the speeder going along the landscape, and then you suddenly realise that that's not a sand dune, it's actually a Star Destroyer, planted in the ground. It really just brought back all the emotions of the original trilogy. And then that end scene in that trailer with Chewie, we're home, really just hit home, John. Yeah,
it was just, as I say, it's absolutely raised the anticipation sky high for the release of the film. We were getting to see all these great characters coming back, along with lots of new exciting characters, primarily being Finn, Poe and Rey. And in terms of, I've spoke personally about openers for this film throughout all the podcasts we've done, and I've said which ones I liked and didn't like. I thought this one was okay. Didn't think it was outstanding by any means, just the sight of, I think, the ship going across the planet. And then we go down to Jakku, and we, as I says, we get introduced to a new character. We get introduced to Poe, and we also get introduced to Los Santeca, is it?
Yes.
And I think this was deliberate. The first words spoken in this film are, "This will begin to make things right." Obviously following on from the prequel trilogy, I think that was a very deliberate addition. It had a double meaning. Obviously for the saga films, it meant that it'll begin to make things right. We're going to find Luke Skywalker potentially, because he had a map to Luke Skywalker in his possession. And I also think it meant that those prequels are done, we're moving on to bigger and better things. And I thought the opening sequence of the ship going across the planet was a little bit a little bit average. Obviously absolutely excited at the time, but just in retrospect I think that. But the shots of Jakku and the First Order Stormtroopers come down and obviously taking over the village, holding everybody hostage, the sight of the X-Wing blowing up, and then we get to see Kylo Ren for the first time in that incredible theme of his plays, and that was an iconic moment for me in this film.
Yeah, that whole scene was actually a set within, I think it might have been Elstree, I'm not sure. It's a very impressive set. You know, you can be convinced that was outdoors, but no, there was humour in there right away from Poe Dameron when he says, "Will you speak first? Will I speak first?" And that took me back to the chemistry and the humour of the original trilogy. It's something that was seriously missing in the prequels, John. I just felt the prequels took themselves too seriously, very dull characters, and right away in this, within the first 3 to 5 minutes, there's that humour back into, very intense scene as well. He's getting interrogated by Kylo Ren, and I think this is the first time we see the Force being used to stop a laser shot, and it just freeze frames in the air. Very impressive. It also gave J.J. Abrams a little excuse to use his lens flare. And we also see the end of the character Max von Sydow plays, Los Santeca. This character does hint that Kylo Ren has got a history from the kickoff, John.
Yeah, just that moment with the blaster getting caught and freezed, that was absolutely incredible. I mean, the first time I seen it, I was like, wow, this guy's powerful. And just the bassy tones off of his helmet, that's one of my favourite things, just the sound of his voice. I mean, Adam Driver's got a very deep voice as it is, but with the helmet on, it was just absolutely iconic for me. It never quite got to the James Earl Jones level of coolness, but it's just it's incredible, the sound of his voice through that helmet. And obviously, as he says, they touch him on the history where he says, "Cannot deny your family," and he says, "You're so right." But just that voice, as I says, even when he says to Poe Dameron, the stormtroopers, I think we actually see Captain Phasma at this point as well, the cool chrome stormtrooper. What a letdown that was, especially with a great actress like Gwendoline Christie inside it. But yeah, I think he says to her and the other stormtroopers to put him on board, and we always love to talk about that, don't we, Stephen? Put him on board. Absolutely fantastic. And we also see Finn toiling and struggling with the clear cruelty that the First Order's displaying in this scene. He sees the blood, you see that epic shot of him with the blood on his helmet, and he's standing there and he's not fired a single blaster round, if you'd like, I don't know the name for it. And yeah, that's just it's a great opening scene to the film. As you say, it sets up the tone, it sets up the humour, sets up the characters beautifully.
Yeah, you know, the character of Finn was going to be interesting for me. You know, the rumours were, was he going to be a Jedi? Was he going to be a spy in a stormtrooper outfit? Basically, he's just conflicted. And as you said, John, that early scene, I think it's when Kylo Ren says, "Kill them all." It really set the tone for the film. You know, I remember when we watched that, and I was thinking, wow, you know, they're really, you know, going down a dark tone right away with this character. Very ruthless, very different to the character of Finn, who, as I said, was very conflicted, wasn't sure what he was doing. And as we see, you know, as we go on, we'll talk more about this character.
Yeah, and then we're introduced to, and again, an iconic shot for me with her really abseiling inside a ruined Star Destroyer. Absolutely incredible. We get the first little part of her theme playing, and me personally, that's one of my favourite themes from this film. I think a lot of people criticise John Williams for his work on The Force Awakens, and I think it's completely out of order. I thought the score in this film was fantastic. Kylo Ren's theme, I thought that was great, very recognisable. As I say, his race theme's absolutely incredible for me. The shot of her sliding down the little sand dune and then popping onto a little red speeder, utterly incredible. That leads us into the town, which the name fails me at this moment, and we meet Unkar Plutt, and then BB-8, who's been sent with the map to Skywalker inside him, meets up with Rey, and we get that cool little moment where she says classified, big secret and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just, I really do like the way they introduce all of the new characters in this film. We get to see Finn, we get to see Poe, who's sadly underused in this, but we can't complain too much because he was originally meant to be killed off. And then we get to see Rey, who is obviously the main player in this new trilogy. And I think it's quite an extended scene with her, isn't it? We get to see her scavenging, going to the town, meeting BB-8, and then we see her almost, it's a sad existence she's got, but she's living inside the fallen over AT-AT. She puts on the rebel helmet, she's counting down the days since she last seen her parents. It's quite a sad and touching moment actually when we see her. And yeah, just, I love the introductions.
Yeah, just getting back to the character BB-8, John, this is actually the first character we see in this episode.
Yeah.
I've got to say, when I saw the trailer, I thought it looked a bit cartoony. I thought, oh no, is this going to be the Jar Jar Binks of this trilogy? It certainly wasn't. One of my favourite characters, great humour, which we'll discuss. The way that the special effects team convinced the audience that this was a ball, could move about, very impressive. I've since seen the making of how they did this. It's very impressive. If you go to the bonus features of the film, there's a special section on how they created this character. Very impressive.
Yeah, I think it was actually a chap with a remote controlling the head, wasn't it? And then it was a chap with green screen stuff on him and running about with the main ball. Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. And it then flips back to the perspective of Poe and Kylo making their way up to the new Star Destroyer. We get to see Finn, with the conflict in him growing ever more, taking off his helmet, looking very traumatised at what's happened down in the village. Gets a little bit of a pulling up off of Phasma. And then we see Poe getting interrogated by Kylo Ren. He's not for giving up any information until Kylo uses his force on him, and then we see the comedy even more with him making his escape with Finn. Finn obviously says, yeah, because it's the right thing to do, and he says, you need a pilot, I need a pilot. It was just a great use of comedy in that moment. And then we see that epic escape from the Star Destroyer in the new TIE fighters. And what was the name of that shot that they used? Can you remember? When General Hux says, use the cannons. Can't remember what the name of the cannons was, but that was so cool, the way they always tracked the TIE.
You know, this is the first time you really got to see inside the TIE fighters, John. You got a bit of it in A New Hope, the trench run inside Vader's, but I love this scene because I think it's the first time that it's mentioned the character of Luke Skywalker. This is when Poe has to retrieve the droid. Yeah, and we then return to Jakku, and then we also get that crash moment. Finn wakes up from his unconscious state, and then in the middle of the Gozen Badlands, I believe it was called, I'm not too sure. And Poe's done a runner apparently, or he's dead, one of the two, we don't know at this point in the film. And then we see Finn making his way, looking very tired, very sweaty, very hot, in that all black uniform across the desert. Didn't anybody tell him that black draws heat in? Good lord, that's the worst choice of colour you could use in a desert setting. But to be fair, that's probably why I didn't want to go back to Jakku. Then we finally get the two characters of Finn and Rey meeting each other. There's an interesting interaction between these two characters obviously BB-8 spots that Finn is wearing Poe Dameron's jacket. There's a bit of a confrontation between Finn and Rey. Rey totally owns him, but you know, when she discovers that, or she assumes that he's part of the Resistance, apparently the droid is carrying a map that leads straight to Luke Skywalker. Now, Rey's next line in this is very surprising to the audience when she says Luke Skywalker. I thought he was just a myth. I was very surprised with this line, John, because you're only talking 32 years, and I think the timeline in the Star Wars galaxy is exactly the same as our timeline as well. How someone can become a myth so quickly is very surprising to me.
Yeah, I just thought the concept of him being a myth and obviously people not knowing who he was, that was really well implemented in this film. The thought of nobody knowing who Luke Skywalker was, it was an interesting angle to go down. Just showed that despite his heroics, that he probably did disappear off the face of the earth really. After Return of the Jedi, he kept himself to himself, starting up the new Jedi Academy, which we've since learnt was a bit of a failure, which is a shame for the character. But yeah, it was interesting, and it's something we see continuing also when we meet Han Solo later on in the film, or shortly in the film, with having a similar action to him, isn't it? You're the famous general of the rebellion or something like that. So yeah, it was an interesting direction for them to go with it. And then we get to see the Millennium Falcon, don't we? And the reveal of that was very interesting.
Yeah, that was just junk.
Yeah, it was just a piece of junk, that's correct. She wanted to use the hopper thing or something like that. And we get to see Rey flying it herself. Yeah. Apparently she didn't need a co-pilot. Chewbacca was a great co-pilot for Han Solo back in the day, but Rey didn't need one. Joking aside, it was an absolutely incredible scene, that with the 2 or the 3 TIE fighters, I can't remember how many it was exactly, chasing after her. The shots of her almost slamming the brakes if it's got brakes, and flipping and stuff and going through the down Star Destroyers, utterly incredible. I loved the scene where the gun get locked, and she had to flip it up because it was the only way they could shoot, and that was just, it was incredible visually, incredible as from an action standpoint. And yeah, I absolutely loved this scene, and that obviously takes us on to meeting Mr. Han Solo and Chewbacca in this new film.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just the right time to introduce one of the legendary characters, as they call them now. Harrison Ford, you know, my concerns was, could they slip back into the role? There was certainly issues with him slipping back into the Indiana Jones role in the 4th movie. Certainly in this film there wasn't anything to worry about. He still had that corny dialogue to deliver. I think the one about some moof milker has put a compressor on the ignition line, so he certainly, you know, didn't lose his delivery in some of these crazy lines. It was also good to see the chemistry between the character Finn and Han Solo too. This developed as the movie went on, but early on the banter between them was very funny. Yeah, I think we touched again upon that when we were discussing the Harrison Ford profile, but really again emphasised the humour in this film. Han Solo in this film is absolutely hilarious. He's cracking jokes left, right and centre. Chewie's the butt of them, Finn's the butt of them at times. I think he actually says at one point, you can't fool a woman or something along those lines because they'll find out eventually. Yeah, and it was lovely to see Han Solo back in the film, because obviously we knew Harrison Ford's opinion on the character over the years, so I was just pleased to see him back in any capacity. And yeah, it was good to see Chewbacca back as well. But I have to say, the next scene that comes is not my favourite in this film. It's probably the weakest scene, with that horrendous CG ball creature. I can't even remember what it's called. I've tried to blank it out in my mind that much. I did like the tell that to Kanji Club moment though. That was quite cool. I like that little guy, obviously from Glasgow, and he looks like it as well. Yeah, the sequence, it kind of interrupted the dialogue between Finn and Rey when they were talking about, this is the Millennium Falcon, you are the Han Solo, and this scene kind of broke that part up a little bit for me, because I think they were just about to delve into what had actually happened to Luke when this was interrupted. But you know, after this sequence, it went on a little bit too long for me. I didn't really see the need for it. I don't know if it was to let the audience know that Han Solo went back to his smuggling days. I think that might have been the purpose of it. But then again, there's a great scene between Rey, Finn and Han reminiscing about Luke Skywalker and what had actually happened. As we says in the New Hope one, he was very cynical in his use towards the Force, and we see a complete 360 from the character in this film.
but he says it was all true, and yeah, he talks about Luke Skywalker and what happened to him. Yeah, it was a very touching moment, and also we get that map of the stars spreading out across the Millennium Falcon. Very, very cool moment. And it leads on to Maz Kanata's castle at this point, and we get to see Lupita Nyong'o's character for the first time. A very strange looking little wrinkly alien who's been around for thousands of years apparently, and
sounds familiar.
yeah, it does sound familiar. And she's got a connection with Force, and again, this is just us tracing over. We seem to do this in every trilogy. Also, we had it in the beginning of Attack of the Clones, we had it in A New Hope. We get another cantina scene.
Yeah.
I think this one's a little bit better than the Attack of the Clones one myself. We see Finn try to do a bunk. At this point, we see, interspersed with this, General Hux delivering his rousing speech to the First Order, and it's very, again, a lot of Nazi connotations. It looks very akin to what they used to do with Adolf and his funny moustache. Yeah, that's an epic moment for me as well, where we see the first signs of what the Starkiller base can do, the signs of the shots of the sun coming out and powering it, and we get to see that incredible moment where they fire upon the Hosnian system, and I think it's several splintered shots fire out and they all hit the individual planets. Very cool. As I said, Finn tries to do a bunk, spots this happening, and I'm just in this moment as well, we get that incredible flashback premonition stroke future scene, because we don't know, there's a bit of a mixture going on there with Rey touching Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and we finally discover what happened to that lightsaber, don't we? Well, where it ended anyway.
Yeah, I remember seeing this for the first time, and you just knew it was Luke Skywalker's, or Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. Yeah. It's such an iconic piece of prop. Certainly one of the most famous movie props in movie history. It was such a shock seeing that, and then obviously the sequence with the flashbacks and the flash forwards, we're assuming now, was very interesting as well.
Yeah, and I remember my first viewing of this, I didn't realise that Yoda spoke in this, and actually I think I missed the Obi-Wan Kenobi part as well, but certainly in the subsequent viewings, and I think I went to see this film about 3 or 4 times in the cinema. I certainly got it after that, and there was actually a cool isolated file where someone isolated just the vocals, and it was incredible when you heard all the different little bits coming in. I think the Emperor actually had a bit in it as well, but just the shot of that tunnel we were talking about in The Empire Strikes Back a couple of days ago, that was incredible, the way they pieced it all together. Very, very cool. Rey's also having none of it at this point. She speaks to Maz Kanata. Maz Kanata says, listen, the family you've got is probably not coming back, you need to look to the forward, the future. And that takes us on to another epic little sequence where the First Order turn up. They've also been alerted by spies within the cantina, but at the same time I think there's Resistance spies as well, alert the Resistance. Yep. And we see them coming together. We didn't actually touch upon Rey getting that cool little silver blaster from Han before but just as they land on this system, or on this planet. And she's obviously firing on it. She's got as good a shot as Leia, apparently. Female characters in this film can't miss with blaster shots. I think Padme was the same in the prequels. And we get to see Kyle turn up, and we get to see Poe Dameron and his incredible piloting skills. That shot of him just going through all, I think it follows his X-Wing as it goes through all the pirouettes and stuff and takes them all down in one shot. Absolutely amazing to see. We get to see Finn fighting with that shock stick wielding trooper. I don't know the name of the weapon, sorry, but that's so cool. There's so much going on in this scene. It's an incredible scene in the film. We get to see Han taking a real liking to Chewbacca's crossbow. So much going on, and then at the end of it we get to see Leia popping up as well. But what was your thoughts on that scene at the time, Stephen?
Just going back to what you were saying about Han Solo giving Rey that little blaster, there certainly seem to be indications that Han Solo, I'm not saying perhaps knew who Rey was, but I don't know, there's a few scenes, in particular in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon as they're arriving. She says, I don't think I've seen so much green, I think it was. And it's just the way he's looking at her. I don't know if it's just pity, or I'm not really sure.
Obviously with Maz Kanata as well. She asks him, who's this girl, and it cuts away just as he's about to speak, so that adds to that a little bit. And
I don't know if this is just J.J. Abrams' style of filmmaking, to leave the audience sort of hanging. Certainly Maz Kanata as a character was very well put together, very convincing. The character itself serves little purpose other than just a guide at this point for Rey. and also an interaction for Han Solo. But you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions in this scene. I don't know if they'll be resolved. Star Wars is certainly famous for leaving a lot unresolved issues that they're not really important in the grand scheme of things, but it's a very touching moment where we see Carrie Fisher coming out of that spaceship, seeing Han Solo for I don't know how many years, but also the humour's there again, where we see C-3PO popping up and interrupting a very touching moment, going on about his red arm.
Yeah, which actually gets explained away in a comic book, and it's not very good. It's not very interesting either. But yeah, just seeing the two of those characters on the screen again, and we get to hear, I think, the first time the reworked version of the Princess Leia theme. Incredible reworking of this, and later on in the film, I think before the final shot where we get to the Jedi, the final steps or something it's called, we hear that more prominently, and I think that's absolutely incredible the way he's reworked that. One of my favourite moments. And yeah, just great seeing those two. Also, Carrie Fisher doesn't get a huge amount of dialogue in this film to say. I think she was a little bit rusty, having not acted in a long time. That's not a criticism of her acting ability, but she doesn't get a lot of dialogue, and that's a fact. And yeah, I think they go off to the Resistance base, don't they?
Yeah.
Have their moment. They discuss how they're going to formulate a plan to attack Starkiller base, and in the midst of this we see Kylo, obviously he's kidnapped Rey. He's froze her incidentally in a previous scene, which was very cool. I loved that. That was that effect again. And he's got her restrained in a chair, and we see him interrogating, and that's another great moment for me, where he says comfortable.
Yeah.
And you say something about freaks in a mask or something. He takes the mask off, and I think he actually slams it on Ashes. It's since been revealed.
Yeah.
Just an incredible moment. Incredible hair as well, by the way. Props to Adam Driver. Fantastic head of hair. How it looked that good after taking a helmet off. I wonder how he does it, because I can't take a hat off without my hair looking horrendous. So props to him for that. Just a brilliant scene. I love the way he delved into her mind, and this really sets up the Force Awakening inside the character of Rey. It seems to act as a sort of a kickstarter for that, and it all blossoms after that. All explodes, and we get to see a little cameo from Daniel Craig at this point as well, don't we? But she's utilising the classic mind trick quicker than any Jedi ever before.
Yeah. Those scenes, it's like a little mini Death Star at this point, where the characters are all running about. As you said, you know, the Resistance are, you know, setting out their plans to attack Starkiller base. There's a few great lines from Han Solo around the briefing room, where I think Finn volunteers and Han Solo says, "I like him," you know, and there's just a few great scenes in there.
He tells a little white lie, doesn't he? He says he's got more information or something like that. He doesn't let on that he was working in Santry or something.
And this leads obviously to the three characters, Han, Chewie and Finn, arriving on Starkiller base, which is a very snowy planet. That's harking back to Hoth.
Very cool entrance as well, where I think they actually come out of hyper space right on the planet, just to avoid being detected. That was a very cool moment, the way they landed and crashed into the trees. I remember seeing the shot of that from, I believe, a trailer, and it was great to see that in the film. And again, we get to see a hint of the humour with Han Solo saying that's not how the Force works, when Finn reveals his true role he had on Starkiller base and says, "Oh, well, we'll just use the Force." Great little moment that, and I loved it. I think Chewbacca complains about being cold, and he says, "Oh, you're cold." And again, we didn't touch on this in Empire Strikes Back, another great Parker for Harrison Ford. He had very reminiscent of his one in Empire Strikes Back. He likes a navy Parker, him, and it was very nice. And yeah, as she says, it is like a mini Death Star. They're all running about doing different things. They bump into Captain Phasma. She gets flung in a trash compactor. That was a nice little nod to the originals. Han Solo also remembering his plight and deciding he was going to put that on her. And Rey just so happens to bump into him in a planet-sized battle station. She happens to be in the exact same sector as him, bumps in. That was a little convenient, but yeah, it was cool seeing her climbing about and stuff like that. And that really leads on to the climactic battle. But I think we have a little scene with Snoke, General Hux, and Kylo Ren at this point as well.
It was some great space battles going on there. The actual effects and the sheer scale of this Death Star, I'll call it, is phenomenal, John. I think some of the battle actually takes place in that big trench, and while this is happening, Poe Dameron's obviously, he's leading the charge. It's very, as you said, it's very similar to climatic battle in A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. Yeah, they have to take down the shield generator. It does remind you a lot of Return of the Jedi in that sense. This is obviously leading up to the confrontation between father and son, Han Solo and Kylo Ren on that very dangerous bridge, John, that doesn't have any railings.
Yeah, that seems to be a lesson the Empire's never learnt. They don't put rails. Clearly they didn't take health and safety very seriously. It doesn't exist, thankfully for them. Sadly it exists in our galaxy. But yeah, it's a very sad moment, this, where we see the end of the Han Solo character. I think we've touched upon this again in the Harrison Ford profile we've done, but we'll not talk about that because we're talking about Star Wars today. And yeah, I mean, I actually had a lump in my throat when I seen this for the first time. I was vaguely aware that it was going to happen because I knew that he was wanting to have this character killed off for a number of years, and I also think someone spoiled it for me before I went in. The Gits on Facebook. So there's a lesson for you: if you don't want the film spoiled, do not watch or look at anything on Facebook before the film, because they spoiled it for me. But yeah, it didn't lose any of its impact. It was a very sad moment. Just the interaction between the two of them. You think he's getting to him, he's talking him round, and then he ignites the lightsaber and kills him. And it's, I actually loved that moment. Chewbacca, the flash of anger, and he shoots him, and I think Kevin Smith touched upon that around about that time, where he was saying, "Come on, yes," and I was the same. I was like, "Go on yourself, Chewbacca." It certainly wasn't Peter Mayhew in the costume at this point, John. No. Now we know, obviously, you know, the man himself is struggling with his walking these days. It's one of those moments that, you know, as you said, it's a lump in the throat moment. The scenes with Chewbacca, you're really rooting for him just to take them all out, and there's that scene where he just pushes the detonation, you know, and the whole thing just implodes from inside. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's very sad to see one of the main three out of the picture, you know, being stabbed through the heart with a lightsaber, falling, you know, a great height, and then a planet imploding. I think it's safe to say that Han Solo's not going to return. It'll be interesting to see how they handle his legacy in the next movie, whether we'll see an extended funeral scene or not. We'll wait and see. We're certainly looking forward to seeing that film, but no, it really just sets up this lightsaber battle in the snowy forest between Finn, Rey and Kylo Ren. Again, this is a studio shot. Absolutely love this moment. Just the shot of Kylo in the snow confronting him. We're not finished yet, and he hurls traitor at Finn. That was just an iconic moment for me in this film. Absolutely loved it. The lightsaber battle, very, very cool, I have to say. Finn obviously picks up the lightsaber from Rey, who I think's hurled against the tree at this point, and he says, "Come and get it." And Kylo brings it to him. It goes a little bit easier on him, I think, at the start, because he's like, this guy's not a Jedi and it'll be easy. But then I think Finn gets a couple of lucky shots in, much like Vader and Luke in The Empire Strikes Back, and he then steps it up a notch with his flipping of the lightsaber and stuff, and takes him to task, really. Slices him up the back. Very brutal for the Finn character, but really, really cool moment. And then we see that other iconic moment in the film where Kylo reaches out for the lightsaber. It goes flying right past him and lands in the hand of Rey. Yeah, I almost wish that this was the moment that Mark Hamill made his entrance, you know. No, but you know, as we're going to talk about in a little moment, he's obviously been saved for a specific shot. It's I think the John Williams theme kicks in when Rey ignites the lightsaber. It does, yeah. And she's still a little bit, I wouldn't say rusty, because at this point we don't really know about her character's handling of a lightsaber, but she's certainly untrained, if you like, from what we're led to believe at this point in the movie. But I was very surprised with how she handled this duel with Kylo Ren. But you've got to remember as well that both characters aren't completed any training. I think Kylo's still under his training with Snoke, and Rey's tried to find someone to guide her on her path. But no, the actual scenes themselves, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fitting for the climatic battle at the very end of this movie. I think this point the planet begins to implode, John. Certainly in the forest begins to split and separates both characters. Yeah, that was a very convenient moment. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of the Rey character for the way she handled that battle. A lot of calls of Mary Sue, which I think is completely undeserved. I thought it was pretty clear that Kylo had been badly wounded in this film. They set up pretty much the whole second half of the film with Han Solo wielding the crossbow, and you've seen the power it possessed with it making stormtroopers fly all over the place with blasts. He takes a blast to the side, he's seen punching his side and he's bleeding. I think it's the first time we see probably blood dripping in a Star Wars film, so it's clear he's injured, and even then he holds his own against her for the vast majority of the fight. And I don't think he's even trying to kill her. He actually says at one point, "Come with me and I'll show you the ways of the Force," or something along those lines. But yeah, as you say, she's not very eloquent in the way she's wielding the lightsaber. It's very much thrust, and you can tell she's been used to that staff thing that she seems to carry everywhere. But that moment where the two lightsabers are crossing, you can see it in the eyes. That's a great moment where she shuts her eyes and lets the Force in. I completely agree with you. Great moment I enjoyed in the film. I loved the battle. Perhaps not as well choreographed as some of the prequel stuff, but it certainly had lots of elements from the original film in there for me. Certainly a more emotional aspect to it, her letting the Force in. Yeah, and that also takes us on to the moment in the film we were all waiting for, Stephen.
And this is when we get to the planet Act. This is through obviously R2-D2 springing into life and completing the map that BB-8 has been holding.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very slow build up. We see Rey going up all those stairs. Skellig Michael, I think the place is called in Ireland, this island. Very historic place, and it's very eerie as well. John Williams' score for the Jedi Steps really adds to the emotion, and I've got to say I did have chills at this moment when we get to see the character of Luke Skywalker entering the movie. We knew the movie was only about 2 minutes away from the finish anyway at this point. I've got to say, initially I was a bit disappointed, but the bigger picture is that this is part of a trilogy. We'll certainly see this character a lot more, but when he pulls down that hood and you see that, I think it's his right hand, it's the robotic hand that he's got from when they lost it during his fight with Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. Just again, you know, I mentioned this in the previous podcast about every Star Wars film ends with a score and no dialogue. This is one of the best ones for me, John.
Yeah, just that moment. Maybe I'm a big softie, but I had a lump in my throat again when I seen him, because I obviously didn't have to wait as long as you, Stephen, to see the character again, because when I first watched him it was in the mid-90s, so I just by sheer virtue of being younger I didn't have as long a wait, but it had an effect on me. I was delighted to see the man back, and that character, it's an utterly iconic character, one of the greatest ever created for me. Everything about the scene was perfect. You're completely right, it was one of the best Star Wars endings, I think, with it really spinning round the island, the music really going to a crescendo with the theme, and yeah, it was just an utterly brilliant moment in the film. It was what we were all really waiting for, and what I was anyway. As a Luke Skywalker fan, he's always been my favourite character in these films, and yeah, brilliant and fitting end to the film. And listen, overall I think this film's a great reintroduction to the Star Wars world. It got a lot of criticism, and as I said at the beginning, in the subsequent years, and 2 years following its release, a lot of people criticising it, saying it's a rehash. What they're failing to forget here is that this had to really introduce lots of new markets that weren't aware of the original film or the prequel films to these films, to the franchise, such as in Asia and different other markets, maybe even India and stuff like that, which are very thriving markets now, especially China.
Even the generation.
Yeah, even the generation gap, people who have maybe not been aware of these films, it had to introduce them, and it had to shake off the shackles of the prequels and the criticism it got, and get the tone right. And it was a lot of pressure on J.J. Abrams' shoulders, and I think he absolutely nailed it. I think it's a great film. It's not a perfect film, but it's a great film for me, and it's not lost its impact since it came out.
Certainly when I went back to it last week and enjoyed it again. It serves its purpose. It sets up, this is what J.J. Abrams is good at doing, setting up a reboot of a franchise. He certainly succeeded. I don't care what anyone thinks. Yes, there is glaring similarities to A New Hope in there, and a bit of a mismatch of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi 2. I'll not reiterate what you've obviously said there, John, because you've hit the nail on the head. It served its purpose. It's reintroduced the franchise to the world. I certainly enjoyed it. This was released in December 2015. Here we are 2 years later, John. We're about to see, Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and it picks up almost immediately after the events of The Force Awakens.
Yeah, and it's been the quickest 2 years I think I've ever recalled. I was just discussing this last night. I can't believe it's nearly here. It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and what we're going to do is the film actually comes out here in the UK on, I think it's Thursday midnight, the 14th of December, and certainly nationwide on the 15th. We're going to be going along on Sunday, John. Kevin, yourself and me, we're going to be doing a special podcast which will be in the similar to our episodic podcast that we do on a weekly basis, but instead of being released on the Wednesday, this will be released on the Sunday night prior to us watching it, because I think after us watching it, I think we're going to be buzzing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long-standing tradition for us to go on the Sunday. We've been doing this with the new Star Wars films, and yeah, I completely share your thoughts. I cannot wait to see this film. It's going to be absolutely epic.
We'd just like to thank you for listening to our Star Wars podcast over the last 8 days. It's certainly been a journey for us, reminiscing from 1999's Phantom Menace all through to 2015's Force Awakens, and obviously the first of the standalone films thrown in there in the mix as well with Rogue One. As I said, we'll be back with our podcast on Sunday, where we'll be talking. It'll be a spoiler review podcast. We're not holding back. We're going to be talking in great depth about this episode. We're certainly looking forward to it, and we'd just like to thank you once again for listening.